Okay friends, welcome to part 1 of our video presentation on chapter 3 that deals with telecommunications and networking. Just to put things a bit into context, if you can recall, chapter 2 was largely about various hardware and software components and technologies. So chapter 3 is about networking or telecommunications, meaning the technologies, components that link hardware and software together. But again, just like we did with chapter 2, the focus here will be more on managerial implications of networking. In other words, we'll talk about how various business issues influence networking and how networking in its turn influences various business issues and practices. Now we'll start with a couple of definitions if you don't mind. Some people make distinction between networking and telecommunications. What some people mean by networking, they mean the electronic linkages of geographically dispersed devices. So a lot of people by networking, they understand the wires, those elements that link together various hardware components. By telecommunications, some people mean by telecommunications the process of communicating at a distance, and that includes both voice and data communication. Now, some of the common synonyms for telecommunications include data communications or datacom, teleprocessing, telecom, and networking. So there is some, sometimes people, call telecommunications networking. But I think the most common term for telecommunications is data communications or datacom. So as you can see, some people separate the physical aspect of telecommunications and they call it networking from the communication aspect of telecommunications, which they call datacom or telecommunications. However, other people, they use telecommunications or datacom as an all-encompassing term involving both telecommunications at a distance and also the hardware, the physical component of communication, meaning the wires that link together the devices that are used subsequently for communication. So we'll stick in this particular presentation. I think we'll stick to the term data communications, and by that we mean both communicating at a distance and also the physical components of a network. Now, telecommunications and networking have been increasingly important to businesses because of distributed processing and globalization. There is a person, his name is Paul Saffo. For a while, I'll show you his Wikipedia page right here. For a while, he was the president of the so-called Institute for the Future. That's what I remember about him. But it looks like this Institute for the Future may be gone now. But Paul Saffo, he's a scientist, he's an engineer or technology evangelist. He's famous for making predictions about the future of technology and engineering. And somewhere in 1990s, he made that prediction that networks will change everything. There is another famous technology futurist. His name is Ben Konsinski. He is in my field, which is management information systems. And I remember when I attended his presentation, he said that the key to being a successful predictor of the future of technology is to make many predictions. If you make many predictions, then at least one of them will come true and you'll be quoted on that. So Paul Saffo, he's quoted on the prediction that network will change everything, or internet will change everything. Now, that was a very successful prediction because I believe it did come true, and in a way it became the mantra of the 1990s and early 2000s, where managers, companies, industries, government officials, they kept talking about the fact that internet is changing everything. Indeed, internet has changed quite a bit when it comes to our individual lives, the way we do business, the way we communicate with others. It also had a profound impact on industries and countries. At the same time, it would be fair to say that internet has not changed some of the fundamentals of business, right? Where profit equals revenues minus cost, and if you don't have clients, if you don't have something valuable to offer, by valuable I mean something that people are willing to pay money for, then you're not going to be profitable. So with this mantra, internet changes everything, a lot of people forgot about business fundamentals that never change. But nevertheless, telecommunications and networking, they have been quite important for the world of business over the last couple of decades. Now, because of that, the telecommunications industry itself has been quite lively and has been going through a period of profound change. where some of the old carriers were kind of broken down and losing their prominence, and some of the new companies selling and manufacturing equipment for networking gained prominence starting late 1990s. But overall, the telecom industry consists of three major groups of companies. First of all, you have carriers. Now, carriers, those are big companies that own, manage, operate, and build that physical infrastructure involving physical networking lines, physical plants, and also sometimes wireless network. And they operate those large networks, and then they lease a portion of that network to other companies, such as service providers. Now, there have been many carriers over the last couple of centuries in the United States and worldwide. Again, things have been changing with them rapidly, with the government breaking them down into parts like bells, and then some of those carriers, they enter different lines of business. But to give you just like one example of a carrier, that would probably be AT&T. Now, AT&T is a multinational telecommunications corporation that is headquartered in Dallas, Texas. And they operate both fixed telephone lines and also wireless or mobile telephone infrastructure. So that would be one example of a carrier. Now, one carrier that is worth mentioning that is in a way is gone is Western Union. Now, when I ask people about Western Union, especially outside of the United States, I ask them, so what do you know about Western Union? What kind of company is this? So most people say that, oh yeah, Western Union is that company that you use for sending money abroad. So a lot of people nowadays around the globe, they know Western Union, from that side. Now I'm sure the founders of Western Union, when they hear this definition of Western Union, they turn in their graves. Because Western Union, back in 19th century, it was one of the pioneering telecommunication carriers in the world. Basically, they operated the so-called telegraph services. Now, telegraph lines were the first, communication lines over large geographical distances. That involved physically connecting cities and towns with wires, and then communication messages would be sent over those wires using Morse code or similar code. Now, they also, as you can read in this Wikipedia entry, they tried to build transcontinental lines, like they were trying to connect Europe to the United States through Russia, and I think this project was abandoned. But they did connect Europe to the United States, and that gave birth to a lot of services and companies being built on the top of that network. For example, they would transmit business news and sports events from London to New York City. So Western Union was a very powerful carrier, starting 19th century. But then something happened in the early 20th century, I believe, late 19th century, early 20th century. There's a famous anecdote or story about somebody coming to William Orton, who was the head of Western Union at that time, and that person came to William Orton and offered him to buy an invention for roughly $2 million in today's money. Now, that invention was telephone, and the gentleman who came to William Orton was Alexander Graham Bell. So, you know what happened afterwards. Well, first of all, William Orton, he refused to buy that invention, the telephone invention, from Alexander Graham Bell. Now, a lot of people, they kind of use it as an example of short-sightedness, but some people, it happened a long time ago, so we don't know what happened for sure. So some business historians, they use it as an example of technological short-sightedness. They were saying that, William Orton, he couldn't see the potential of this new invention. Others are saying that William Orton, he was not that dumb. He perfectly understood what kind of impact the telephone invention would have on their telegraph business. But it's just that the entire company, Western Union, it was based on this idea of providing telegraph services. So that's why he didn't follow that invention, because he felt that it's something that is outside of their business. In other words, there is no way they can build a new infrastructure specifically for the telephone invention. So some people are saying that, other people are saying that he wasn't short-sighted. It's just that he wanted to focus on their main business, which was telegraph. And he felt that even if he wanted to, he could not accommodate this new invention because it was a totally different line of business for them. So anyways, you know what happened afterwards. Telephone killed the business of Western Union, and they discontinued their telegraph business somewhere in 2006. This is the portion that talks about the discontinuation of their telegraph business. So nowadays, their business have been reduced indeed to doing those international money transfers. So that's what Western Union is known for. But it was a big, well-known telecommunication, big, powerful, rich telecommunication companies for roughly 200 years. So anyways, those are some examples of large carriers, the companies that build, operate, and lease infrastructure to other players in the telecom industry. Then you have the so-called equipment vendors. Those are the companies who manufacture and sell telecommunication equipment. Some of those companies, especially the ones who produce networking equipment for the internet, they gained a lot of prominence starting in late 1990s. One company, an example of a company producing equipment for networking, and also the company that gained a lot of prominence lately, is Cisco Systems. Now, at some point, Cisco Systems, I think we're talking about like late 1990s. It was the largest company by book value in the world, because that was the time of the so-called dot-com boom, where investors were pouring billions of dollars into internet companies. And all those investors, they believe that since Cisco Systems manufactures, networking equipment for the internet, this will be like the new backbone of business transactions, and that Cisco Systems will become, the Microsoft, the Standard Oil of the 21st century. Now, that didn't happen. Eventually, the stock valuation of Cisco Systems fell down, but the company is still out there. It's still a big multi-billion-dollar company, and they're still playing an important role when it comes to producing networking equipment. So that's an example of a networking equipment company or vendor. And then you have service providers. Basically, those are companies who operate and deliver various network services, for example, providing access to the internet. Sometimes things are blurry, and like a company like AT&T Wireless, it can also be an internet service provider. At least in the United States, that's what's happening. Those carriers are also big players when it comes to providing services to both businesses and individuals. So AT&T Wireless would be an example of a company that is providing mobile services to both residential and business locations. And they also provide access to the internet, I believe. I think the last time I had an internet service connection, it was from AT&T. One thing worth to mentioning is that, telecommunication industry is gaining momentum around the world. I think there is a pragmatic reason for that, because telecom is becoming the backbone of commerce in the 21st century. In some countries, such as United Arab Emirates, telecom is believed to be like the second most important industry behind oil industry. For example, I remember reading a report about the United Arab Emirates, and United Arab Emirates is the country that is oil rich, and because of that, the government has no tax, and they collect most of their money that they use for public services and improving infrastructure from oil, from the proceeds of from sales of oil. And the research basically said that the telecommunication industry that is also owned and operated by the government of the United Arab Emirates. There's a company called Etisalat that is the monopoly in the United Arab Emirates, and also it's a major telecom company in the Middle East and in the world. So they were saying that for the government of the United Arab Emirates, oil is number one source of money, of revenues, and telecom is number two source of money. And they're saying that telecom is quickly approaching oil when it comes to the revenue profit generation potential for the government. So indeed, it could be that the telecommunication industry will become the backbone of commerce of the 21st century, the industry that powers all other industries and companies. Now, there are 5 primary reasons as to why networking is important, as to why it's useful from a technological and managerial side. Well, first of all, networking allows sharing of technology resources. It also allows to share data among different network participants over large distances. It also allows for distributed data processing, the so-called client-server architecture. It also allows for enhanced communications among individuals and businesses. And overall, as I said, and according to Paul Sappho, networking seems to have a big transformational impact on both individual enterprises and entire industries. Now, a few words to expand on this idea that networking or telecommunications or data communications allows for sharing of technology resources. Now, prior to the advancement in data communications or networking capabilities, computers could not even share printers. Now, that was a big problem from the economic / managerial side, where each computer had to be equipped with a printer. If you wanted to print something, you had to copy it on a floppy drive or some kind of external drive, and then you had to physically walk over to the computer, which is connected to a printer. So that was very inefficient, from both economic and managerial standpoint. But today, PCs share software. You have the so-called virtualization trend, where each PC can connect to any kind of software installation on a central server. Devices can be shared, so all this improves performance of the overall IT infrastructure and the cost dimension of the IT networking infrastructure. Also, networking allows to share data, so data can be retrieved and stored on various nodes, various components of the network. It allows for efficient transactions among businesses and their partners, customers, and various business units within one enterprise. Some businesses, they may share large amounts of data, like terabytes of data per day, and this is all implemented with the help of networking or data communications. And of course, nowadays there is a lot of data sharing over the internet, where sharing is done only within companies, but also outside of companies, and sometimes this data travels across the globe. Now, also, telecommunications allows for the so-called distributed data processing and client-server systems. Now, distributed data processing means that information processing that uses multiple computers at multiple sites, and all of those computers, all of those sites are tied together into one single processing unit. This idea for a long time has been called grid computing, where several computers can be connected together into one supercomputer and power data processing and general processing. Nowadays, some of the newer technologies are also based on this idea of grid computing or distributed data processing. Now, one technology that is gaining prominence nowadays is the so-called Hadoop. Now, Apache Hadoop is an open source software framework written in Java that allows for distributed storage and distributed processing of a very large data set. Now, the key idea behind Hadoop is that this processing of big data can be done using commodity hardware, simply by connecting all of those computers together through using the Hadoop architecture. So that would be an example of kind of modern day approach to distributed data processing in the era of big data. And then client-server systems. It's a type of distributed system in which the processing power is distributed between a central server, which is typically a powerful computer, and also the client computers, which are less powerful computers on the user side. So this type of organization has been quite dominant since 1990s. It seems to be like the most cost efficient, because this kind of architecture eliminates the need for many central powerful mainframe computers or supercomputers. But of course, things are changing. I told you that because of the cloud architecture movement. The fashion is switching back to this kind of centralized computing architecture, away from client-server architecture. Now, enhanced communication is also afforded by the advancements in telecom or datacom. So telecommunication networks provide the ability to communicate through email, bulletin boards, blogs, instant messages, wikis, social networks, video conferencing, and so forth. Now, a couple of observations have been made here. First of all, some of those new age means of communication, such as social networking, they believe to have like a profound negative impact on individuals. For example, social networks, they waste people time. Sometimes they're blamed for creating some psychological problems like narcissism, and developing an unrealistic view of life and self, because on social networks everybody is bragging about their travel, about their purchases, so that kind of creates an unrealistic view as to what life is all about among many users of social networks. But nevertheless, this is what everyone is doing. So it's sometimes personally I think it's more about fashion, it's more about some kind of social conventions rather than optimizing communication, because email seems to be very cheap and easy communication tools, but nowadays, as they're saying, if you want to reach somebody, especially if you're talking about young people, you have to be on social media. Now, another interesting observation about video conferencing, I remember like in 1990s, everybody was saying that video conferencing will eliminate the need for travel. Everybody will be having business meetings, interviews over the internet. Now, indeed, Skype or video conferencing in general is quite popular nowadays, but it doesn't seem to be replacing travel. In fact, if you look at some of the statistics of airline companies worldwide, you will see that people are actually traveling more nowadays. So video conferencing does not seem to eliminate the need for physical travel. Or maybe if you look at that statistic closely, maybe some of that travel is actually, maybe the proportion of leisure travel is growing while the proportion of business travel is decreasing. But overall, video conferencing has not reduced the need for traveling over large geographical distances through airlines. Also, networks allow to enhance communication not only between or among users, it's also about companies. The so-called electronic data interchanges or EDIs, they help businesses to improve linkages among different business units and also within those companies themselves. There's one famous example of EDIs. In fact, it's one of the first examples of a company using an EDI to transform itself and gain competitive advantage. And that example is Sabre Reservation System. Now, Sabre Reservation System was created by American Airlines. The origins of this project go back to 1960s. So basically, American Airlines decided to automate the process of reserving airline tickets with the help of computing. So they created like a one central mainframe location, and then travel agents would have terminals being linked to the central reservation system. Now, this system, first of all, it improved the efficiency of operations of American Airlines, but ultimately it gave Sabre a huge advantage over other companies, because booking tickets, booking travel through the centralized electronic system was so easy that a lot of travel agents, they refused to work with other airline companies. Actually, I'm not quite sure how reservation was done in the old days before electronic data interchange. What I suspect, the reservations were done like in semi-manual form, where each travel agent would have some kind of record, and then they would call, if they're about to sell a ticket, they would probably call the central location to confirm the reservation, or maybe airline companies would give like certain allowances to travel agents, saying, well, you can sell up to 10 tickets for this particular flight, but still there was some kind of synchronization over phone lines probably. So automating this process gave American Airlines a huge advantage. They also tried to use it in what some people believe was an unfair way. For example, eventually they allowed other airlines to participate in that Sabre reservation system. However, they always made sure that American Airlines listings always come at the top of the results when a travel agent searches for a particular ticket. So I think there was like a series of lawsuits where Sabre, American Airlines, was accused of monopolizing the airline reservation market. And Sabre is still alive. Actually, some of those, I'm not sure which ones, but some of those popular online reservation websites, such as Orbitz, Expedia, Kayak, they are powered by the offshoots of the Sabre reservation system. So that was an example where telecommunications not only transformed the operations of a particular company, but it also gave them a big boost when it comes to their overall competitiveness and profitability. This is something that brings us to point number 5. Telecommunications or data communications is important because it really transforms individual companies and industries. Creates a profound wave of change for a lot of companies and a lot of industries. Now, if you want to read more about the transformational impact of networking, but especially if you want to read about transformational impact of the internet, I suggest you read the following article by Michael Porter. The article is called Strategy and the Internet. Now, in case you don't know, Michael Porter is one of the most well-known management professors. Arguably, his work started the field of strategy. So if you want to understand the field of strategy, and I think everybody has to understand strategy regardless of which field he or she is working in, especially when you assume some kind of managerial or senior role within an organization, be it like a technology role or a role in accounting. So everybody has to understand some of the ideas from the field of strategy. So if you want to understand some of the most fundamental ideas of the field of strategy, I suggest you read this article, because this article exposes you to two fundamental frameworks: the so-called value chain model, which is right here, and then the so-called Michael Porter's 5-force industry model, which is right here. So largely, the field of strategy is about those two, understanding and using those two frameworks. But since this class is about IT management, I would like to bring your attention to how Michael Porter was using this framework to explain transformational impact of the internet. Now, he used the so-called value chain model to explain how internet changes various segments of a company. For example, he was saying human resources, internet allows for web-based training, self-service of personnel and benefit administration. So basically those are like operational impacts within certain areas of an enterprise. Michael Porter also uses this framework to explain the profound impact that the internet has had on companies at the industry level, not at the level of individual companies, but at the level of industries. Well, first of all, he says that internet has this dangerous side of increasing rivalry or competition among companies. Now think about it. With the help of internet, a lot of companies are competing now in one big global space. So just because you have a company somewhere in the United States does not mean that you will have no competition from companies located somewhere in India or China. Now this is happening nowadays with eBay. Now for a long time eBay was a very dominant online trading platform. Nowadays there's a powerful competitor emerging from China, and the company is called I think it's called Alibaba. One second, I'll pull it here. Yeah, the company is called Alibaba. It's a Chinese kind of eBay equivalent, and they have like several platforms. There's like AliExpress, and they're becoming global. I mean, they're trading across the globe, and their role, as you can probably guess, is that they're linking all those vendors, all those manufacturers in China with consumers around the globe. So you see, like just because you're an American company, you're not isolated from competition, from global competition on the internet. So this is something that changes a lot of industries, where now you have to worry about global competition and not just local or regional competition. Also, he says that internet gives more bargaining power to buyers, and this is something that is good for buyers but not good for companies, because with the help of internet, consumers can look at different product offerings, they can compare pricing. It's very hard to kind of lock in customer to a particular price or a particular geographical area. For example, if you go to a local electronics store and you don't like the kind of selections they have, or you don't like the prices for digital cameras, you go online to bestbuy.com and you'll buy it there. So in other words, customers have choices. Now electronic vendors have more things to worry about. So read those two articles to get like better theoretical understanding of how internet changes individual companies, which is something that is expressed by this framework, and how internet changes entire industry. So here we have a lot of examples. And also what I like about this article is that it was written at the end of the dot-com boom. So Michael Porter kind of brings companies and managers back into sobriety, and he basically says, look guys, internet indeed has had a profound impact on companies and industries, but the fundamentals of business are still the same. And he is saying that no matter where things go next, you will be a winner if you stick to the fundamentals. Internet or not, the fundamentals of business, such as offering something valuable to customers and making sure that you make profit out of this, those rules, they still stay the same. So there's no escape from those old rules of doing business. Okay friends, so this concludes part 1 of our video presentation on telecommunications. Thank you for listening.